And welcome to MyMyTV.com. I'm Steve Lehto. It's My Michigan Television. You'll notice I'm not in my studio. I'm outside in beautiful southeastern Michigan enjoying the weather because that's what I like to do. Standing to my left is my dear friend, Mark Lieberman from Nostalgic Motoring. Mark, how are you today?
Outstanding.
Well,
love being here.
Okay, good. Well, here's where we are. And of course, it's the Troy Traffic Jam, one of the coolest car shows in the Midwest. We come here every year. Hundreds of people bring their cars here today. It's a free car show. If you want to see cool cars, we got tons of cool cars. In fact, I'm looking right now. I see a Ford GT. I see a Copo Camaro. I see a Corvette. I see this beautiful red Viper with that funky license plate that nobody understands. I see another Cobra over here, and we'll have probably 400 or 500 cars out here today, maybe 5,000 people. But again, it's a free car show, and it's on 16 Mile Road, just east of I-75. And we're hosted by the people from the Columbia Center who have done this graciously every year because we're raising money for the Troy Historical Society.
Kirko does an amazing job in sponsoring this event. And I'll tell you that people from all over this area bring their collector cars and enjoy the wonderful weather, the camaraderie between the collectors, tell their stories of the vehicles, and talk about basically their experience through the collector car world.
Yeah, and so what we're going to do right now, because we have this technology at My Michigan Television, is we're going to go for a walk, and we're just going to walk down a row of cars here, and we can talk about cars. We might be able to talk to some people. But the cool thing is I see a lot of cars here from my childhood, okay? So, for instance, we've got the convertible goat here, the GTO. You got to like that. Now, it's parked next to something modern, both sides of it, of course, flanking it. But as we look down the aisle, I actually see 3 cars from my childhood. That is a 69 Dodge Charger, which we'll get to. I had one of those in high school. And then also a GTX. A brother of mine had one of those. And this gold Riviera, very, very unusual car. You don't see these very often, especially not on the road. But absolutely gorgeous car. People forget how big and luxurious cars were back in the day. But again, the Riviera, this one's got the fixed headlights in the grill. A couple of years later, they had the clamshells that were hidden behind here. Very, very cool cars. I've always enjoyed these cars. My brother had a 65 Riviera in high school. Everyone in Birmingham knew that car.
Absolutely. And you know, people take these cars and restore them to their ideal vision of what they want their cars to be. You know, in this instance, he's smoothed the firewall, add some custom chrome and modern embellishments on the engine, and took a little step with the interior with the ostrich inserts. It's you know, it's a lovely setup. Mild custom, a little bit resto mod, but you know, surely it's what the owner had in mind to be his dream car.
And some very, very tasteful modifications that I didn't even notice till you mentioned. But for instance, the antenna is disappeared into the fender. Some people didn't like the antenna sticking up from the fender. It's back in the old days. You had to have the antenna sticking up to get your AM radio in loud and clear. But of course, a whole lot of stuff happening here under the hood. But if you put it under the hood, once the hood's closed, no one knows that's there. And that becomes what we call a sleeper. A sleeper.
Yeah, we always would enjoy taking something that nobody expected, putting something hot under the hood, and let's say either winning a few dollars or just at least surprising the heck out of them.
And so what we have here is a 1962 Chevy II, which is the predecessor, of course, to the Nova. I'm not even sure. Do they call it actually a Chevy II Nova or just a Chevy II?
Chevy II.
Okay. And again, underneath the hood, we've got a whole bunch of modifications. You wouldn't know they're there because of the, hidden under the hood. But again, a lot of beautiful work. And that's what I've always admired about the guys who do this kind of work, this high quality, is that that's so clean you could eat off it, but you wouldn't want to get it dirty.
No. You know, yeah, ultimately, the people that build these cars take a huge amount of pride in them, and they're done at various different levels.
So I would tell people that car is almost as old as I am, but I don't want to give away my age here. So I think we need to take a break right now. So we're going to do that. We'll be right back after this on MyMyTelevision.com.
This is My Michigan TV, a unique news streaming television network. To watch, simply add our app to your smartphone or smart TV. You can also watch online at MyMyTV.com. My Michigan TV. My.
Pure is what you make of it. It's feeling the sun warm your skin and a cool lake wash away your cares. Pure is turning a lighthouse into your North Star and letting a ride through the woods turn into dinner by the shore. It's taking it all in and never taking anything for granted. The sun sets, the moon rises, and you realize the end of one perfect summer day is the beginning of another. Pursue your Pure in Pure, Michigan.
Let's whoop it up for these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Jimmy John's Field is the perfect venue for birthday parties, summer picnics, company outings, and provides the best entertainment in Metro Detroit with great baseball all summer long. Spend your summer nights under the lights at Jimmy John's Field in historic downtown Utica.
Pure is what you make of it. It's how the hustle of the cities can change the course of history. It's the beauty of the things we create on a canvas, on a plate, or stretched high above the sidewalk. It's a patch of green or a stretch of blue, right in the heart of downtown. It's the buzz of it all, or if you prefer, it's tuning it all out. Clear your schedule and pursue your Pure in Pure, Michigan.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Welcome to Mackinac Island.
I'm so excited to kick off the 2022 Pure Michigan summer travel season.
We are here to give you some incredible ideas for your summer vacation. Well, yay.
Now the Great Lakes State has its own streaming TV network, My Michigan TV. My.
Welcome back to MyMichiganTelevision.com. I am Steve Lehto with Mark Lieberman at the Troy Traffic Jam. We've been walking around looking at cars. We just got started. It's early. We're expecting maybe 400, 500 cars here, all for a good cause, raising money for the historical village of Troy.
Yes, and their specifically their education funding. Tremendous source of income for them when they have this thing fully sponsored, and we love to be a part of it. Amazing venue.
And the thing we want to stress is that this car show is free. Anybody can come by, stop by, walk around, check out the cars. It's absolutely free. We are just east of I-75 on 16 Mile Road, about, 3/4 of a mile over or something, at the Columbia Center. You can't miss it. Get on 16 Mile, head over this way, and you will simply see beautiful cars, acres and acres of beautiful cars, and of course, all kinds of car guys walking around. And by the way, Mark, I want to point out that while we do this with the technology from My Michigan Television, we can actually look up close at some of these cars, unlike some other TV shows that might not be able to do that. And this car we're looking at right here, SS 396 Chevelle. I want to point out to you that it's got that cool feature with the Cowl Induction. Can you explain to us what that does?
Okay, so the Cowl Induction feature on these engines were set up in order to force air into the engine at speed. Interestingly enough, most people thought that it was only a forward-facing scoop that could add additional air to the carburetor. In this instance, the air actually bounces off the windshield, goes back into the cowl and down to the carburetor. And the interesting thing also is that it's vacuum operated. So the only time that is really open is when you have a loss in vacuum. So it's when full throttle is open.
So when you stomp on it, the vacuum drops at the carburetor. That thing flips open to get you fresh air. And like you said, a lot of people don't think about the aerodynamics of cars, but engineers think about it all day long. And so if a car like this is going through the air, driving down the road, the faster it goes, the more air builds up in front of it, increases the air pressure. You get an extremely high pressure system right here, if we're talking weather terms. So to have that facing backwards, it works perfectly well because that's where the high pressure is on that car. It's a beautiful car. Friend of mine in high school had a black one, no stripe, no cowl induction, but that is a classic car. I love those cars.
They're awesome, and they've become iconic. You know, a very, very popular make and model for the collectors.
Yeah, I love that car.
Behind it, we have a 1971 Dodge Challenger convertible.
There we go. A brother of mine actually had a Dodge Challenger. I kid you not. Keep in mind, I have 5 brothers, and when we grew up, we were all car guys. We loved our cars, and all we had was American-made cars. My brother's wasn't a convertible, but it was a Challenger. And again, this is one of those classic body styles. Of course, I'm a Mopar guy, and I know you are too. You've owned a couple Mopars, haven't you?
I haven't been without a Challenger since 1977.
Okay.
So, yes, I have had a lot of Mopars over the years.
Yes. And so tell me a little bit about the 340. I suspect you know all about that.
340 small block was considered a powerful small block in 1971. It was really the last year that Dodge would offer an unencumbered or not smogged up 340, because in 1972 and 1973, emissions took over and we lost a great deal of horsepower in these. So in 1971, this was still a spirited engine to drive. There were a lot of fun. In this instance, it's mated with a 727 automatic 3-speed transmission. It has a nice combination for being able to propel this convertible around and have a lot of fun doing it.
And you mentioned the 727 automatic, sometimes called a torque flight. And it was considered to be one of the most indestructible automatic transmissions. If you had a kid with a lead foot, you had to buy him something, you get him a torque flight. They can't damage the trans. They can damage other stuff, but not the transmission.
Yeah, it is a good transmission for sure. And this is a nice package. You know, you gotta love the vitamin C orange with a white interior, the white wall tires, which is as it would have presented new. In this instance, if you take a look, it has drum brakes all the way around.
Okay.
So when this car was spec'd in, they didn't opt for the front discs, but 4-wheel drum, and that was still very common on these things.
But I love the Mopar wheels. The Mopar wheels are beautiful.
Yep, fantastic wheels. The RT option gave you the side louvers in front of the rear wheels, and really a nice, tidy package. A beautiful example of 71 Dodge Challenger convertible.
And now this is true of many cars from this era, but especially Mopar. You always knew what type of car you were looking at by the badging. Okay, so under the hood, of course, on the air cleaner box, you've got the 340 4-barrel call out. That lets you know what the engine is. On the side of the car, you got the RT emblems to let you know that this is in fact an RT package. So it's been upped a little bit for performance. And directly behind us is another car. And this, by the way, one of my favorite cars of all time, 69 Dodge Charger. Many people would remember the 69 Dodge Charger as the car from Dukes of Hazzard, right?
Yes.
But this one, of course, has got the bumblebee stripe on the back by the trunk, the RT call out there as well. That lets you know this is a high performance car. But this one is special because it's a special edition. And you notice a special edition call out on the B-pillar here. And that special edition lets you know this car came with air conditioning, leather seats, power windows, and a couple other options. You could get those options available on a car of this era, but you could get it all as one package as a special edition. So this is a SE-RT 69 Dodge Charger.
It is, and they were pretty well respected on the streets. You know, there were a lot of people that picked these up and tore the pavement up with them, and you know, they were well-known staples on Woodward. But I'm going to go back to one point that you made earlier. You were talking about the badging. You know, car identity was super important in this era, and so when you looked at a grill in 1970, you knew whether you were looking at a Dodge. You knew whether you were looking at a Plymouth. You could tell if you were looking at a Buick. You could tell. Each of these cars had their own persona.
Yeah.
And that has kind of gone away a bit in modern times. Back in this point, you knew exactly what you were looking at, and you were looking forward to seeing what that particular brand was coming up with. So not only was the badging part of their branding, but their overall look in general became a staple for being able to identify that car.
And one of the things I know about, because I had a 69 Dodge Charger in high school, is this has got the flip-up headlights right here. Those are vacuum operated. But if you want to tell these cars apart, because 68, 69, and 70 look kind of similar from the side, the 68 does not have the center divider, and the 70's got the bumper that goes up and over. So from the front end, you can tell, and also from the back end, the taillights changed from 68, 69 to 70. My favorite year was 69, but then again, I had one in high school, so, you can't beat that.
Well, let's talk about how they tied the 69 Charger into the 69 Daytona.
Yeah, we could do that because this was the full-size car that NASCAR was allowing the Dodge drivers to race. And the problem is this car is not terribly aerodynamic the way it's built because it's got this big scoop right here that catches air. So they put a nose cone and a wing on it. They call it a Daytona. They built 500 of them. They raced them in NASCAR. And if you can find those cars, they're worth a lot of money.
And how did they do?
They did very, very well. In fact, one of the cars set 28 land speed records at Bonneville in 1971, driven by Bobby Isaac. Richard Petty drove a Superbird, which is a sister car to that. But amazing cars back when the factories weren't supposed to be helping them race, but they were making race cars.
Now, what do they do for aerodynamics when they put that package together?
Well, the nose cone created tons of downforce, but also made the air get around the car faster. And then the tail fin, the big wing in the back, pushed the back end down. And because of that, they could stay stuck to the high banks of places like Daytona and Talladega. And those cars were routinely running laps 200 miles an hour back, and the other cars doing 180, 190.
Did they eventually outlaw that type of aerodynamic control?
Yes, NASCAR did not like that at all. NASCAR said, you guys got to get back to racing regular cars. Otherwise, we don't know what's happening at these tracks anymore. So we've got a nice little group of Mopars here. And for those people who were shopping for the Mopars back in the day but wanted to save a little money, we've got yourself the Plymouth Duster.
Yes. So this was considered an economical means of transportation at the time, though you could buy performance packages for them. In this particular instance, we have another 340 four-barrel that is part of this particular package. And you could have four-speed, you could get bucket seats. There were a variety of performance-related items. So you could either take this to the mild, economic, six-cylinder side grocery getter, or you could set it up to tear up the streets.
And one of the things I'd like to point out is that this engine, the 340, is the same engine in essence that we saw in the Challenger back there. So there was a time when you go to a Dodge dealer, Plymouth dealer, or whatever and say, I want to buy the lowest cost car you've got, but I want to drop in your big old performance motor. Is that okay to do? And they say, sure, knock yourself out. They're all interchangeable, sort of.
Well, Dodge and Plymouth really had quite a reputation of being able to order special versions, not only that were on the normal order sheet, but every once in a while you get an executive that could pull some strings at the factory and get something dropped in one of these cars that you wouldn't normally be able to get. And that always caused the stir.
Now, I grew up in Birmingham, Michigan. I know you grew up in the same general area. You must have had the same situation I did. I had people living on my street who were executives at car companies. And I went to school with a bunch of kids whose parents worked at the car companies. And you'd hear stories about that where, oh, they're working on some special car over here and some guy brought it home last night, was playing with it. Things were a little different back then with respect to liability and what they do to these cars.
Absolutely. But, you know, it's interesting because people get enthusiastic about these vehicles and they want to know more about them. Now, in the instance of winged cars, Superbirds and Daytonas, where could somebody pick up a book and read about such things to be able to learn all the nuances, details, and history of these vehicles?
There's actually a great book about it that somebody wrote, but it's out of print now. So it's a collector's item. You can get them. They'll just cost you a couple $100. But I wrote a book about the wing cars, and it's why I know so much about these cars. I went back and interviewed guys who worked in these cars back in the day. And some of these guys will tell you they worked in the auto industry from the 60s, 70s, 80s. That it all was a highlight, was working there in the 60s because they were working on performance cars. Cars were fun. And then EPA came along and kind of ruined the fun. And next thing you know, all the cars look alike and they're slow.
Well, you know, everything evolves.
Yeah.
And we'll, I'm sure, take this conversation into electric cars as we move our way through the decades of vehicle history.
You'll have to pry my V10 engine out of my cold, dead hands before I drive an electric car. We're going to take a break right now. We are at the Troy traffic jam in Troy, Michigan on 16 Mile Road. That's Big Beaver. We're just east of I-75. It is a free car show till 3 o'clock this afternoon. If you're in the area, stop on by. Mark and I'll be right back after this on My Michigan Television.
This is My Michigan TV, a unique news streaming television network. To watch simply add our app to your smartphone or smart TV. You can also watch online at mymytv.com. My Michigan TV. My.
I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Jimmy John's Field is the perfect venue for birthday parties, summer picnics, company outings, and provides the best entertainment in Metro Detroit with great baseball all summer long. Spend your summer nights under the lights at Jimmy John's Field in historic downtown Utica.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Welcome to Mackinac Island.
I'm so excited to kick off the 2022 Pure Michigan summer travel season.
We are here to give you some incredible ideas for your summer vacation. Well, yay.
Now the Great Lakes State has its own streaming TV network, My Michigan TV. My.
Welcome back to mymytv.com. I am Steve Lehto, My Michigan Television. I'm here with Mark Lieberman at the Troy Traffic Jam. This is a car show you turned me on to a couple of years ago, and it's for a cause. They're raising money for Troy Historic Village. It's at the Columbia Center. I believe they've volunteered to let us use this space for this car show. 400 or 500 cars here today, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people will show up. Beautiful weather for a car show, a lot of nice cars, and I'll admit, I'm a little bit more into the Detroit muscle than anything else, and there's so much of it here, I couldn't be happier.
Oh, it's an awesome venue, incredible array of cars, and we'll get a chance to look at and focus on some of the details, not just with the automobiles, but about the collectors as well,
Yeah.
because there's always great stories here.
Yeah, now I dragged everyone over here because this is my second favorite Mopar. I like the Chargers, but I like the Plymouth GTX. And of course, this is on the Roadrunner chassis, basically, but slightly different configuration. And we'll get to it. But one of the coolest features of all time ever to come out of Detroit, I don't care what anybody says, the coolest accessory you could get is on this car.
The air grabber hood. I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
this was one of the things that Plymouth advertised back in the day. In 1969, you had an image of a GTX pulling up to the light, quiet and not making a lot of noise. And he looks over at the car next to him, and he revs his engine a couple times, hits the switch, and the trap door opens on the hood with the teeth shining at the front opening of the front opening of the scoop. And there you have it. It was ready to gulp gobs of air into this engine.
So we've got a 440 Super Commando mill here, but right here is the typical air cleaner. But you'll notice the air cleaner actually meshes up against that and seals it. And what you're talking about, and unfortunately it's down right now, but it's vacuum actuated, and you can flip a switch underneath the hood, and the hood scoop will pop up and allow you to get cool air into the engine, which is, engines like.
Cool engine is power.
Yes, yes. But I love this car. This would be the car they turned into the Superbird in 1970, the way they turned the 69 Charger into the Daytona.
Like my car.
Is this your car?
Yes, it is.
And what is your name, sir?
Mike Mordarski.
Mike Mordarski.
Yeah.
Mordarski.
That's it.
Mike Mordarski, and where are you from?
Washington Township.
Washington Township. So you're not far from here.
Nope.
Have you always been a Mopar guy?
35 years as an engineer at Chrysler, so yes.
That'll do it. Okay, so 35 years. What year did you start?
I started right in college. I retired in 2008, so I've been retired for what now, 14 years.
Okay, but don't make me do the math. What year did you start?
73.
So 73. So you got in just at the tail end of the muscle, right?
These were just still lab cars because we were still doing things out at the proving grounds. But I'll tell you, when we went to lunch, we never took the Hemis in the winter because they wouldn't start. And if they did, they fouled out. You always took the 6 cylinders if you were going to lunch at Highland Park.
Right.
Because you knew you could get back on time. But anyway, yeah, these were just lab cars to us because, you know, I was in phase of some of these. But they kept a lot of this around just to see, can we use this in the next generation of cars, until finally the government started mandating so many changes, safety-wise, a lot of this went away.
And here, I got to ask you a question.
Sure.
You threw three. You said a lab car and the proving grounds. Are you telling me you got to work basically on like the experimental cars you guys were building back then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Proving grounds meaning Chelsea.
Of course, the Chelsea Proving Grounds, where a lot of work was done developing race cars and other top secret projects that Chrysler was working on.
And I was part of the Aero group with the Birds coming. The Daytonas and the Birds were still in phases back then too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you knew Dr. John Pointer,
Oh, yeah.
Larry
Yeah.
Rathgab?
Yeah.
Okay, I know these guys too.
Yeah.
Well, Larry passed away last year, so
Yeah.
very, very
Yeah.
sad.
No, Pointer, we'd sit at lunch. He'd be playing with his beard, sucking on that pipe of his, telling us stories of what went on out there at Chelsea. But you know,
Yeah.
I was a young guy, so I wasn't up there in the meetings. I was making copies, you know, for them to discuss certain things at the meeting. But you always had the heritage there. And then when CTC, the Chrysler Technical Center, was developed, obviously with the wind tunnel, Pointer had a lot with that. Gary Romberg had a lot with that. So I was in the 3A scale model stuff with part of that. Was part of our department. So we ran 3 shifts all day long, because when you have your own wind tunnel on site, you're going to use it.
Yeah. And interestingly, we were talking earlier about the aerodynamics of the Superbird and the Daytona. Chrysler was one of the first companies, if not the first automotive company, to actually use a wind tunnel for aerodynamic testing on cars. Most people don't know that. The Chrysler was like on the cutting edge of that when it comes to that.
Yeah, we had to go to actually airplane tunnels to do this kind of stuff. The U of M had a small 3A scale model. We would do some of the things out at Ann Arbor, but later on, they just decided they're going to start building their own. So we had a 3A and a full scale at Auburn Hills when they did the tech center out there.
Okay, well, obviously, Mark and I are both big fans of the Mopars. Mark's got a whole bunch of them also. I'm going to ask you a big favor. We didn't clear this before we went on camera, but is there any chance you could lower the hood and fire the engine up and pop the air grabber for us?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, thank you very much, because this is my favorite option. Whoever came up with this idea deserves a combination of the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know what awards they give to inventors for cool stuff.
Steve, I think you've over dramatized.
No.
The value of the air grabber hood scoop.
No. I'm telling you right now, if I can install my Viper, I would. Oh, hang on a second. A lot of these vehicles, the car collectors will have a battery disconnect because the cars often sit for periods of time between drives. So he's disconnected the battery, and he did that today too.
Well, and that is actually an important feature, because as you have, even in the restored vehicles, you certainly want to do everything that you can. Yeah, exactly. A barbecue at a car event is really a sad thing.
Yeah. So here we go. 1970 Plymouth GTX with a 440.
And there you have it. The air grabber comes up, ready for action to go gobs of fresh air into that carburetor.
I'm telling you right now, that is the coolest graphic ever to come out of Detroit. That's the coolest option ever to come out of Detroit. I will take that to my grave.
Well, the shaker was pretty cool too.
Shaker was okay, but other companies used a shaker also.
Wonderful.
And there she goes. And Mark, can you think of a reason why that might have been inspired by an engineer who worked in Detroit?
Well, you know, and I think that our guests can speak to this as well, but I'm sure that the cold winters with lots of snow had something to do with them wanting to close off the ability to get cold air into that system.
Sure. Anything that has an air grabber or a shaker hood car, the rain is going to be funneled through there. So as you notice, these are the drain holes. It's right here to the side. So as the rain would be pushed in here, you didn't want it puddling and flooding out the motor. So they would drain off and then mist on the side of the exhaust manifolds, and you'd have a nice steam effect going down the road in the winter if you did have snow plowing through there.
And I have a question for you. Is this vehicle, did you get it this condition or did you clean it up? Because this thing looks like it's from the showroom.
No, I bought this car out of Alberta, Canada 3 years ago, but I run a small restoration shop. I do a lot of Mopar components like dashes and steering columns and pedal swings and the heater box. So being the former engineer I was, I'm too anal with the details, so I had to go through the car. So I at least had time to clean up the engine compartment. But what's unique about this car, it's been painted once about 20 years ago. It's got the original sheet metal on the car, original vinyl top, original headliner, trim panels. Fenders have never been taken off the car because here's the telltale sign on B-body Mopars. This is a production fill that they would foam in there. Nobody that restores cars takes the time to refoam these things. So you can see that. And it has a sheet, it's all matching numbers. And I just, I wanted another GTX because I had one once before that I had to sell for another project car, but this one came along and went to Alberta, Canada to see it and buy it and bring it over the border.
And since we've got the owner with us, I don't feel bad coming in and pointing at things interior of the engine. But everyone knows there's a vehicle identification number up here underneath the glass.
Yes.
And you can look at that and it'll tell you some things about the car, what year it is, sometimes the body style, the engine type, and so on. But there's a more important tag on the inside of the fender here. And this tag right here tells you every single thing about the car as it came down the assembly line. What color the paint was going to be, what type of interior, what color interior, automatic, manual, whatever's going to have. And so that little tag right there becomes such a vital thing for guys who are restoring their cars, who want to restore them back to exactly the way they came down the assembly line.
Absolutely correct. And
Yes.
if you notice the red Pentastar on the glass in the corner up on the windshield,
Right here, yeah, by the A-pillar.
Chrysler at Highland Park used that red Pentastar at the gate shack. So when you're driving an engineering car out, it had the red Pentastar. If you were just doing the traditional butt hauler, it was a white Pentastar with a blue star. And if you were lucky enough to be Gold Star, you got free fuel. So you were private roll.
Oh,
So
wow.
The guards would wave on the Gold Stars. We would have to be asked, where are you going? Sign out, bring it back, blah, blah. But yeah, I had some of these extra Pentastars left over in my desk way back when. I just thought traditionally it'd be nice to put it on my car. So
Okay, let me ask you a really dumb question because I like to throw these in once in a while.
Sure.
Have you ever checked the gas mileage on this thing?
not at all.
Okay, good for you.
Not something that really matters at this stage.
Okay. Well, Mike, thank you very much for showing us a
Thank you,
beautiful car.
guys. I
And
appreciate it. Yeah.
we'll talk to you later because I have so much to talk to you about that. You know, obviously I could talk about this car all day long. We are at the Troy Traffic Jam. I'm Steve Lehto. Mark Lieberman standing next to me. We'll be right back after this on mymichigantelevision.com.
Pure is what you make of it. It's feeling the sun warm your skin and a cool lake wash away your cares. Pure is turning a lighthouse into your North Star and letting a ride through the woods turn into dinner by the shore. It's taking it all in and never taking anything for granted. The sun sets, the moon rises, and you realize the end of one perfect summer day is the beginning of another. Pursue your Pure in Pure, Michigan.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Jimmy John's Field is the perfect venue for birthday parties, summer picnics, company outings, and provides the best entertainment in Metro Detroit with great baseball all summer long. Spend your summer nights under the lights at Jimmy John's Field in historic downtown Utica.
Pure is what you make of it. It's how the hustle of the cities can change the course of history. It's the beauty of the things we create on a canvas, on a plate, or stretched high above the sidewalk. It's a patch of green or a stretch of blue, right in the heart of downtown. It's the buzz of it all, or if you prefer, it's tuning it all out. Clear your schedule and pursue your Pure in Pure, Michigan.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Welcome to Mackinac Island.
I'm so excited to kick off the 2022 Pure Michigan summer travel season.
We are here to give you some incredible ideas for your summer vacation. Well, yay.
Now the Great Lakes State has its own streaming TV network, My Michigan TV. My.
Welcome back to My Michigan Television. I'm Steve Lehto. This is Mark Lieberman. We are at the Columbia Center in Troy, the Troy Traffic Jam. It's a car show running today till 3 o'clock. If you're in the area, please stop by. We're on 16 Mile Road, just east of I-75. The show is free. You can get in and check out hundreds of cars. They're beautiful. They run the gamut of everything you can think of, old, new, foreign, American, you name it, it's here.
It is a great field. Lots of amazing stories by people that have brought the cars here and what they've done to them in order to prepare them and make them their pride and joy.
And now we just happen to be standing in front of a very beautiful car. And of course, this would be a Cobra. And Cobras, of course, have a long storied history going back to Carroll Shelby. Can you tell me a little bit about the Cobra?
Well, initially speaking, Carroll Shelby was looking for a platform to build a car that was going to eat up the track. And he went to AC Cars in England and found the AC platform that he was going to build the AC Cobra on. That eventually turned into the Shelby Cobra. And in this particular instance, what you see is a continuation of that. This is a replica of the 1965 Cobra, and it is done with all period drivetrain to be an accurate representation of what it was like to drive one of these when they were new. In this particular instance, we have a 427 cubic inch engine with Weber downdraft carburetors. This is called a side oiler. And this is the type of engine that was used back in the day in these. They produced lots of horsepower and torque and really made them the envy of race cars out there at that point in time. The interior is done, again, to a period correct standard. And they used, in this particular build, Connolly leather interior with a leather dash. We have Stewart Warner gauges, which were not necessarily the only option that you could get in. There was a couple of different instrument packages that could be used at that point in time. And in this particular presentation, we have a car with side exhaust and the Hallebrand style wheels. So you have got something that is, a really interesting, iconic impression of what these cars were originally in the day. It makes a lot of noise, runs really well, and you end up with a car that's a whole lot of fun to take out.
And Mark, you often gloss over things, on not slowing down at the things that it's like there's three things here we need to point out. This car's got side pipes. Those are cool. Okay, yes. Those are cool. Now, some American cars used to have side pipes. They basically got rid of them a few years ago. They seem to think that they're like a risk to injury. If you're stepping out of the car, you might burn yourself on it because they do get hot, but they're cool. They're just cool. And then directly behind that, we have to see if we can get a shot of this. This is what we call a knockoff hub. This wheel does not have lug nuts on it the way that a typical car has 4, 5, 6 lug nuts. This has got a single spinner lug that you spin on or spin off to remove that wheel, which of course comes to us from the racing era, because if you pull into pits, lug nuts take time. That takes less time, but of course it's just cool.
Yes, indeed, and as you can see, it's safety wired on, which was typical of the race cars at the time. The idea here is you only had one fastener to remove in order to switch that wheel in rapid form.
And one other thing I want to ask you about, because I'm curious, you know this car, it shows 171 miles on the clock. Is that correct?
It is. This car has got an interesting story. In fact, it is manufactured by a company called ERA out of Connecticut. They were built in kit form. So the customer would buy the car. It would have the body, the chassis, all the basic components necessary. You supply your own drivetrain for it, and basically put it together to your taste. In this case, he put it together in a period accurate state, spent a lot of time sourcing these bits and pieces, but he assembled this car back in the late 80s.
Wow.
And it was completed 89, 1990-ish. He had put 60 miles on the car when he decided that it may be a little more car than he was comfortable driving, parked it in his garage and enjoyed looking at it for 30 some years.
It's an absolutely gorgeous car, but I noticed it's got a whole bunch of carburetors.
Yes.
What's that configuration referred to? Is that 4 2-barrels or
That's
eight?
it's called an 8-stack, and it is.
Eight stack,
It's
okay.
it is 2-barrel Weber carburetors,
Okay.
and they are a challenge to adjust correctly and accurately. But once you have them, they are amazing, both in sound and performance.
It's almost like a primitive fuel injection, but not quite.
Well, it's not fuel injection,
I
but
know, I know.
it is an advanced carburetor setup that Weber used quite regularly, not only on Cobras, but on GT40s.
Right. Okay. Okay. And so Carroll Shelby, well-known racer, he raced himself. He also built cars for other racers. But I've always liked the fact that this car was clearly built by a guy who was only thinking, I don't care about anything else. I'm just looking at racing it. So you have over here, for instance, you have the roll bar. This roll bar, of course, is behind the driver. I noticed that the passenger's on their own.
Indeed. Well, in this particular instance, this is set up for the one person racing the car.
Right.
Now, in years subsequent to this, as the reproductions and tributes came along, you could order this with 2 roll bars. In fact, we're both Superformance and Backdraft dealers, and so we sell new versions of these
Right.
that you can order to the color, specification, and drivetrain that you want,
But the authentic ones have 1 roll bar, not 2.
or none.
Or none. There you go. Well, if you flip this thing, you're already in trouble. And I also like the fuel filler over there because it reminds me of the fuel fillers on the Mopars, the late 60s. And of course, I'm assuming that's where they got this idea from. And that is it's just cool. I mean, it's fun to put gas in your car when you've got that fuel filler.
It's called a quick release cap, and it was very common to the race cars of the time.
Right, right. This is a beautiful car. Do you have any idea on statistics of performance, 0 to 60 or anything like that on it?
Well, you had a lot of different drivetrain versions in this.
Right.
But they were certainly capable of quarter miles in the 12s, and you have lots of horsepower. And the idea here is that with things like the independent rear end, you can have incredible handling. So the idea is that these things were set up for road courses, much more so than a quarter-mile run.
Right.
But they're certainly very capable.
Right. And one of the interesting things about people who grew up in Detroit is it seems our cars were built that if you stopped at a light and the light turned green, you could stomp on it and it would go really fast in a straight line. Okay. But they didn't handle or corner all that well. In fact, some of them didn't stop that well. And so there's a huge difference. And I'm not trying to say anything negative about American-made cars, but it just seemed like they didn't care so much about handling as they did about just flat-out acceleration and horsepower.
Well, the cars that the American manufacturer were focused on for the street, they weren't really that concerned about handling at that moment.
Right.
This was designed for the track.
Right.
So they purposely built a chassis that was very rigid. In fact, the suspension on this was one of the first computer designed suspensions back in the 60s. They were operating the computers with their reel-to-reel tapes.
Right.
Right.
The guys with slide rules.
Exactly. So it was one of the first advanced design suspensions, and it really paid off because these cars handle amazing.
Wow. Well, I'm not plugging this car because it's mine, but it actually is. We just happen to be standing next to my Viper. And I'm only calling this out because of the fact that there's a connection between Carroll Shelby, the designer of the Cobra, and the designer of the Viper. And I understand he's not the sole designer, but he had a big hand in it, right?
So yes, tell us about exactly what that connection is.
Well, I just know that somewhere along the line, he got together with some people from live television, my friends. He got together with people at Chrysler, and they said, Carroll, we're thinking about possibly building a show car that we can take out and show America that Dodge still has some designing gravitas. And so they asked him what his thoughts would be on making a modern car of that sort, a high-performance car. And so he came up with this idea that became the Viper. And I understand they brought it to a North American International Auto Show one year as a show car, as something they were simply showing people, this is what we could build. And my understanding is that Bob Lutz was there at the time. And they asked Bob, they said, why do you guys keep building show cars? Why don't you sell some? And he said, in essence, well, if people will buy it, we'll build it. And somebody said, I think people will buy it. So they built it. So they started building Vipers. This is a second generation Viper. The first Vipers were like the AC Cobra with the fact that they had no roof. Second generation, starting, I believe, in 96, they added the hardtop. So you get either way hardtop or the, convertible. And so this has a lot in common with the Cobra. This, of course, has got a V10 aluminum block engine, puts out 500, 550 horsepower, something like that. 6 speeds. It goes pretty well. It gets around.
Yes. Tell us about what it's like to drive this on the street.
Well, you know, I'm an attorney, so I always follow all traffic regulations that are local, state laws, and if I left the country, went to Canada, I'd follow Canadian law too. But this thing will get up to the speed limit very, very quickly. So if you were in a 60-mile-per-hour speed limit, you can get there in about 3 seconds. I can also tell you that in first gear, this thing has got such a nice gearing to it. In first gear, it'll go 60 miles an hour without redlining, which I've never heard of that before until I got this car. And that's one of the things that they even touted back then. This thing's got so much power that you could, if you want to, go 60 in first. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can.
Well, the 10-cylinder engine in these were very torquey motors, and they use them in trucks as well.
Yes.
In fact, this was a popular engine to put in the Dodge Ram. They did an all iron block version in that, and it was quite a workhorse.
Yeah, and the car's a lot of fun. Interestingly, it was very primitive in a roundabout way, because I guess when they wanted to put them into production, they kind of rushed the schedule compared to other cars. So when the cars first came out, they had side pipes, but they got rid of those in the second generation. So my car does not have side pipes, but there's some other things about the car that seem kind of primitive. For instance, it does not have anti-lock brakes. And I've got to remind myself of that from time to time, because you can't do an emergency stomp on the brakes or things might get sideways real fast.
Well, you know, in any instance, this becomes a driver's car. You need to pay attention.
Yes. Now, for those who are interested, we talked about the hood scoops on the other cars. This car has got a functional hood scoop right here, which is sealed into the air intake on the engine. And it's got functional air extractors over the wheel wells. And many people don't understand this, but this came from NASCAR. 1969 and 1970, Dodge and Plymouth put these on their race cars to get the dirty air out of the engine compartment, because it actually made a difference. And they wind tunnel tested cars with or without these. And with these, they were actually running a little bit faster. And nobody knew it. So Chrysler lied and said, oh, we're doing it for tire clearance. When in reality, they were doing it to get the air, dirty air out of the engine compartment. So that's the story of my Viper and the AC Cobra. These cars are related distantly, maybe like second cousins or something. But we are at the Troy traffic jam in Troy on 16 Mile Road, just east of I-75. Swing on by. It's a free car show running till 3 o'clock today. Stop by, say hi to Mark and I. We'll be right back on My Michigan Television.
This is My Michigan TV, a unique news streaming television network. To watch simply add our app to your smartphone or smart TV. You can also watch online at mymytv.com. My Michigan TV. My.
You know, it's peaceful, it's quiet, and the noise and stress of life can sometimes disappear.
It's the Great Lakes water. And so what people do ends up in our waterways.
It's for our health and safety, it's for our economy, it's for protecting the environment that we all enjoy and we all need to survive.
So clearing storm drains and the areas nearby of trash and leaves helps keep them for rain only.
We're all about one water in this region. We're all connected. We all have a role.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's whoop it up for these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Jimmy John's Field is the perfect venue for birthday parties, summer picnics, company outings, and provides the best entertainment in Metro Detroit with great baseball all summer long. Spend your summer nights under the lights at Jimmy John's Field in historic downtown Utica.
feeling good.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Welcome to Mackinac Island.
I'm so excited to kick off the 2022 Pure Michigan summer travel season.
We are here to give you some incredible ideas for your summer vacation. Well, yay.
Now the Great Lakes State has its own streaming TV network, My Michigan TV. My.
And welcome back to My Michigan Television. I'm Steve Lehto. We are at the Troy traffic jam in Troy, Michigan. If you can get out today in your southeastern Michigan, please head on over. We're at 16 Mile Road, it's Big Beaver Road. We're east of I-75. There are hundreds of cars in this parking lot. The show is for free. You can get in for free, wander around, check out the cars. A lot of beautiful cars, a lot of great owners to talk about. And the stuff that we see today is a little of everything. So right now, this right here, 1916 Ford Model T Runabout, owned by a gentleman from Rochester Hills, Steve Shotwell. And it does say here, describing a ocean-to-ocean trip made in a Model T with 55 Model Ts, 4,400 miles. Is this your car, sir?
Yes, it is.
Well, let's talk to you about your car. This is Steve Shotwell, right?
Pleasure, yes.
Yes, and I noticed you have the period hat on. That's
Yes,
nice.
I do.
That's nice.
Normally I have the rest of the period costume on too, but
There
it's
you
a little
go.
bit warm today.
Yeah, it's a hot one today. So can you tell us a little bit about this car? What is this car and what's so special about it?
Yeah, this was my grandfather's Model T.
Wow.
It was lost out of our family for 25 years after Grandpa died, and I got it back. And it's changed my life. I'm now very much a part of the Ford Piquette Avenue Plant Museum. That's Ford Motor Company's first factory they ever built. I've been the president of that for a few years, and now I'm running a major renovation program where this car was actually invented.
Wow. And so you said your grandfather had this car. Was he the original owner?
No, he wasn't. And I met the owner, by the way, that owned it before that. There were a number of people that owned it before my grandfather. Grandpa died in 74. And I got it back in 1999. And it had actually been owned by 3 other people after Grandpa died.
Oh,
and
wow.
it took a long time to go through that chain to find it. And actually, my grandfather's possessions were still in the back of the car.
Wow. And so
if I could, I'm going to come on over here. I'm going to show you a picture of my grandfather. This is a picture of my grandfather in 1972. And you notice the duster that he's wearing. That's very common for this. My mom actually gave him that duster in 1970 for Father's Day. And that was in the back of the car 25 years after Grandpa died.
and the duster you're referring to is the overcoat there that's designed to keep you
Yes.
from getting covered in dust as you go down the road in this vehicle.
So this is now hanging in my den.
Wow.
Because these are the things that we cherish. This car goes to 9 elementary schools every year. I'm a retired school administrator here in Troy. And once I got this car, I retired after 35 years of working here. Just dearly love this school district. And basically what I do is I take this car to share stories about people, families. I teach the word cherish to individuals as well.
Right.
And it's a blast. Usually I take 6 to 8 Model Ts with me to these schools. The kids learn about Henry Ford and the Model T. And they also get a chance to sit in the cars, honk the horns, and have a blast.
And you make the point, and I think that we need to stress that people think of a car show as being a bunch of cars and it's a show about cars. It's not. It's the people who own them, the people who love them, the people who built them. These cars have touched people's lives. As you've mentioned, this has brought like something in your family full circle. The fact that you've got the car now after all those years ago when your grandfather owned it.
Very well said. It's not about the cars. It's the stories that are abundant in here. And as you go and look at these other cars, those are the things that I'm looking for. Sure, we all like to see an old car and admire how they used to do things, and they do it differently now. Absolutely. But the real stories are the things about the cars that we can learn from. And each of these other owners that are close to me here, we've spent time together,
Right.
and I love hearing their stories.
Right. Let's walk around over here, because I noticed you've got part of the engine covering pulled back, and it looks to me like it's got a little bit of modification there. But if you could tell us what we're looking at here.
I'd love to. This is called a Model T cooker. And what it is, it's a stainless steel pot. I'm going to show you the insides of it too.
Okay.
That fits on the engine. I'm going to take it off. That's the exhaust manifold, which generates an incredible amount of heat.
Okay.
So I left Rochester Hills this morning, and I have now cooked my lunch in this. And I do this on all of our Model T trips. This car is going to be in Battle Creek this week. And next week, it's going to be up in the Thumb area. And it's been over the Mackinac Bridge a number of times. And usually, as I'm driving these places, this is what's there. And let me show you what's inside. Slide this door. Again, it's stainless steel. And I have two different things I've been cooking today. Over here, there's hot dogs and beans. Okay, that's what's on the lunch menu for today. What's the beauty of this is I'm driving this car.
Right.
The aroma inside of the car is just wonderful as this stuff is percolating.
So it's like a rolling kitchen.
Yes, it is. And we don't cook by temperature. We don't cook by time. We cook by miles. If I put in raw meat or potatoes, we cut them up very, very small so that they can cook. And if I put in raw vegetables or meat, I know that I have to drive at least 90 miles to cook that. Today, I put in something that literally came out of a can or of a package. So it's already pre-cooked, but I'm going to heat it so it's more fun.
Maybe somebody should put together a Model T engine cookbook so that people can do this going forward.
I can sell you one if you like it.
You got one? Okay, okay.
But I want to show you one more thing because it didn't end there. Over here, you can see that I have a 4-berry pie that's just waiting because that's my dessert. So I put two different, those are slow cooker bags. I put those inside the engine so that as I'm driving, that pie is going to be nice and warmed up for me.
Okay, now there are some car people in the audience who are going to ask me, underneath the cooking apparatus, what type of engine is that?
Yes, it's Model Ts were built from 1909 through 1927. And basically, they are all pretty much the same engine. It's a 20 horsepower engine.
Can you pull that out so we can see the engine?
Let's take a look.
We'll have to put that back on so the food doesn't spoil.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Okay. So it's a 20 horsepower engine. You can see that's a 4-cylinder. It has a single barrel carburetor, and notice that it's very low on the engine. Carburetor is normally on top. This car doesn't have a fuel pump, water pump, or oil pump. So the gasoline tank is directly underneath my fanny. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. By gravity, it feeds that carburetor. Look inside over here. See that? Here is that gas tank. And to get a good view of it, I'm going to lift this up. And there you can see the tank. It's 10 gallons. And that 10-gallon tank, every gallon, I can drive about 20 miles. So I take this to third grade classrooms because they can do the math. Once they're about midpoint in a third grade year, they know how to do multiplication of 10 times 20. And that gives you, as you know, the answer in terms of how many miles I can drive. What I do, though, there's no gas gauge on this. So I'm going to show you the next thing I have to do. Now, notice that I had to get the seat out. So my wife and I have to get out of the car. And this right here is a gas gauge of how many gallons are left inside of the tank. So I'm going to take this and push this in here. And you're going to see that roughly there are 7 gallons. You can see where that wet line exists on there.
Interesting.
7 gallons, and I can go 20 miles with each one of those. We know how far I can drive right now. A third grader can do that. Okay?
Exactly. And back in the day, people weren't commuting 100 miles each way in one of these vehicles. Most likely it's around town and stuff. So you could get away with a small gas tank and without a gas gauge, probably.
Well, more importantly, it was finding a gas station.
That's true.
And you know what's funny is it's drugstores that were initially selling gasoline. Gasoline is a byproduct of a lot of the refining business. In the days, they were trying to figure out what to do with this product called gasoline. And that's where it finally worked out inside of automobiles, it worked out pretty good. But they were interested in more of the crude oils, et cetera, that could be refined from raw oil.
Now, let me ask you a question. We can get the camera around here and take a look at it. I always am fascinated by how dashboards and controls have changed in cars. In fact, can you walk around with me? And I think Dave is the cameraman, so Dave will be able to tell us if he can see what we're pointing at, for instance. But for instance, what is this switch right there?
Right. That's really an ignition switch. It has two components to it. You can turn it in two directions. I'm going to turn it right now. I'm going to reach over you. You can turn it here, and it's going to run off of a battery, or you can turn it over here, and it's going to run off the magneto. The magneto is a series of 16 magnets that are attached to the flywheel, and they generate electricity.
So it's kind of like a modern day alternator, but the magneto is a predecessor to that.
Exactly. Most of us have lawnmowers. Those all run on magnetos.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
As the engine is rotating, it's generating this power. I'm going to turn this back off a second. So the
Now-
bottom line here is it doesn't. But if you don't, I'm going to tell you something, because you used a word a little while ago that I think we need to talk about a little bit. Okay.
Predecessor?
Dashboard.
Dashboard. Oh, that was my next question.
Yes.
Why are there no gauges here?
There are no gauges in a Model T.
Okay.
You don't know the temperature. By the way, I have a temperature gauge on the radiator, and Henry didn't give that to you. You had to buy that separately. Okay.
Right.
There's no fuel gauge. There's no speedometer, no odometer,
No tachometer.
no temperature. No.
No check engine light?
Nothing. No. No, there's not. But you know what I would like to do is spend a little bit of time with the word dashboard,
Okay.
because we use that easily.
Yes.
And where did it come from?
I do not know. And I actually am fascinated by word origin. So if you can tell me, I would appreciate it.
I can. This entire body was not made by Ford Motor Company. Okay. The bodies were actually made by the horse and carriage industry here in Detroit. This was the largest horse and carriage industry in the world. And that was a significant part why Detroit became the automotive capital.
Right.
Henry and his engineers were interested in terms of making the running chassis, but not the bodies.
Okay.
There were 5 different companies that made bodies for Henry. Some of them were in Pontiac. Matter of fact, it was called Pontiac. Some of them were in Detroit. They were all over the place.
Right.
And it was a huge thing. They were all horse and carriage makers. And in the front of your horse buggy, there is a board in front of the driver of this horse carriage. And the front of that is called a dashboard. And how did it get its name? Well, the horse that's pulling that is dashing. That horse, as it's running, and there's 2 things that come up from the hooves of that horse that are coming up onto that board. One of them is mud, and the other is caca. Okay, because all that is in the roadway.
Right.
I'm a teacher. I'm an elementary school teacher, so we call it caca. Okay.
Yeah.
And as it comes up to that board, and that board, by the way, usually has a slope to it like this, because as the horse throws that material up here, because of gravity, it's going to slough off and fall on here and not hit the passenger or this. So they called it a dashboard.
Okay, that's fascinating. So here's the next question. I noticed that I'm looking at this vehicle and it's got 3 pedals, which makes sense to me.
Good.
But there is also 2 levers up here. There are 2 levers up here.
Yes.
And those are not what most people think they are. What do those levers do?
Well, we're going to start with 3 pedals.
Okay.
Okay. None of them are gas.
Okay.
So you notice the key is in the ignition?
What key?
That's the key that I was turning on the ignition right here.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm going to show you that key. It's a little unusual.
Okay.
By the way, the first 2 million all use the same key.
Okay. Why not?
So anyway, to start, you need to know where the gas is. This is actually the gas pedal right here. We call it a gas lever.
Okay. So the accelerator pedal is replaced, or not replaced. It just hadn't been invented
Yes.
yet, basically. And that's what you do with this lever here, is to increase or decrease the throttle.
Yes. This lever over here is timing. Timing determines in the throw of the piston at which point the spark plug is going to fire.
Right.
On a Model T, it's in a very special position because we don't want to break your arm. The pedal is on the floor. The one on the right is sort of a brake. Model Ts didn't have brakes. It has a caliper that goes around the transmission. I'll show you one of those.
Okay.
That squeezes the transmission, and that friction slows the car down to stop.
I've seen trucks that had emergency brakes that did the same thing, grabbing a disc on the drive shaft.
Yes, similar idea.
Okay.
The pedal on the left is sort of a clutch. You push it into the floor, you get low gear, you let it up, it's in high gear. There's only 2 forward gears.
Okay.
What does that likely leave this other pedal for in the middle? Take a guess.
Let me think. That's the infotainment center.
Well done. There's usually an R that's on it, and that R would stand for
reverse.
You got it. So to go backwards, we press that pedal. and it helps us go backwards.
So I have a question for you. Have you ever tried to teach someone to drive this car who'd never driven before, given them instructions, said, knock yourself out? Have you ever tried that?
I do it a lot.
How often do they do it before they panic and hit the wrong pedal?
Usually it takes 45 minutes of a lesson, and then I come back with another 45-minute lesson later. And people do pretty well, to be very honest with you. I teach more women how to drive Model Ts than men. And there's a strategy in that. I happen to be the president of a large club here in Detroit.
Right.
And my wife is a good example of this. If something were to happen to me physically, my wife wouldn't know how to drive this car. And she needs to get me to some help.
Yeah.
So I do that with females that their husbands drive a Model T.
Okay.
We've discovered that men have a very hard time teaching their wives how to drive a Model T.
Right.
So I let the husband participate in this. He can be in the car, but he's not allowed to talk. And he is going to go along, and I give him a notepad, and he writes down everything that we talk about with his wife. And I'm smiling through all of this because, nope, you can't talk. No, you can't say that.
Right.
Okay. And the wife is just really, really happy because she's already tried this once and it didn't work. So we have some fun with it. And hopefully we have safer Model T drivers this way, because now in the car, somebody else can drive the car too.
And some people might say, why do we need to have safer Model T drivers out there? There can't be that many of these around. First of all, how many Model Ts got built? And do you have any idea, thumbnail, as to how many there might still be?
Yes, I can tell you the first number. And the answer is he made a little bit more than 15 million Model Ts between 1909 and 1927. And he had 41 assembly locations around the world, 21 in the United States, 20 in foreign countries. These things were being assembled, including places like Helsinki, Berlin, Moscow, okay? Wow. And just mammoth. Most of the places, unlike a couple of those cities that I mentioned, are on the ports so that he could ship parts and even partially completed vehicles, to there. This is an amazing assembly process. Inside of the United States, most of those are land-based. That you have, although a huge one in Buffalo, there's one in Windsor, very close, et cetera, inside of here.
And I do want to ask about one more thing here, because I like watching how the technology has changed over the generations and the years. And this car, of course, has wooden spoke wheels, which, of course, as you pointed out, is a carryover from the carriages that are horse-drawn and so on. But eventually we went to, steel rims and so on.
Yes.
So do you have any trouble getting tires for it or getting the tires serviced?
Well, let's deal with two things. First of all, let's talk about the tires and let's talk about the spokes, okay? Because you brought up a good point there. Tires, yes. They are no longer made here in the United States. This is my grandfather's car. When I got it, it had cars that were made in Australia, and because that's where they were being made. Now, all Model T, and there's about 6 or 7 different manufacturers, brand names, they're all made in the same factory in Vietnam.
Okay.
And you'll find that in our culture, those are the changes that have taken place. We talk about labor, we're talking about materials, et cetera. That's where that has gone to. The spokes is a different story. What's interesting, a lot of people think, oh, those must be oak. They're not. Oak will break. It's the wrong thing. These are actually made out of the same wood that baseball bats are made out of. It's hickory.
Okay.
Hickory is actually stronger than oak, and it has a little bit of flex to it. That's why they make great baseball bats, because when the batters hit it, they know a little bit of flex there is going to give them more distance.
Right.
If they were hitting oak, they would be cracking and breaking much more frequently, because it's a brittle, type of a wood. All of my spokes were made by an Amish wheel maker in Ohio. He does a lot of business. There's a couple other Amish wheel makers for Model Ts on the west side of the country. But Noah Stutzman is his name in Ohio. And it takes him right now usually a little bit more than 12 weeks to take yours, because he has such a backlog of these.
Well, that's amazing. And I could stand here and talk to you all day long. In fact, I will come back and talk to you some more. I absolutely love these cars. I love the history. It's been a pleasure meeting you, sir. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And I will be right back on My Michigan Television.
This is My Michigan TV, a unique news streaming television network. To watch simply at our app to your smartphone or smart TV. You can also watch online at mymytv.com. My Michigan TV. My.
It's peaceful, it's quiet, and the noise and stress of life can sometimes disappear.
It's the Great Lakes water. And so what people do ends up in our waterways.
It's for our health and safety. It's for our economy. It's for protecting the environment that we all enjoy and we all need to survive.
So clearing storm drains and the areas nearby of trash and leaves helps keep them for rain only.
We're all about one water in this region. We're all connected. We all have a role.
I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's whoop it up for these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Jimmy John's Field is the perfect venue for birthday parties, summer picnics, company outings, and provides the best entertainment in Metro Detroit with great baseball all summer long. Spend your summer nights under the lights at Jimmy John's Field in historic downtown Utica.
I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Welcome to Mackinac Island.
I'm so excited to kick off the 2022 Pure Michigan summer travel season.
We are here to give you some incredible ideas for your summer vacation. Well, yay.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Now the Great Lakes State has its own streaming TV network, My Michigan TV. My.
Welcome back to My Michigan Television. I'm Steve Lehto. We're at the Columbia Center in Troy, the Troy Traffic Jam. It's an annual car show they do here to raise money. The Troy Historical Village, it's a great cause. About 400 or 500 cars here, as you can see. Thousands of people. It's a great show because it's free. Because people brought their cars out here. You can walk amongst them. You can talk to them. You can look at the cars. You'll see more cool cars here. I've got a couple of cars that are on my favorite list. I've seen 2 or 3 of each of them out here today. So it's been a great time. Also talked to a lot of great people. So I think we're going to take a stroll here and see what else we can find. We talked to that gentleman there in the top hat about his Model T just a moment ago. Learned more about how to cook with an old Ford than anything else. But that was great. And, you know, they don't build them like they used to. And you know, there's arguments to be made both for and against different kinds of technology. But, you know, you got actual body parts made out of wood. And those were the days. So we're going to stroll along here. And, of course, if you can take a gander over there and check out the supercharger sticking through the hood in that car, that's when you have the big engine and you want people to know it. You don't mind. And that, of course, the supercharger, you don't need to hear it run, but trust me, when that thing's running, it makes a really cool whining noise off that belt. But that whole thing there jams horsepower into the engine. That's how I'll simplify it for you, okay? So Gotta love it when people step the car up a little bit. You know, the factories couldn't turn them out like this back in the day. The federal government wasn't too crazy about that kind of stuff. Again, a nicely cleaned up vehicle here. And one of the great things about car folks, I hate to say car guys because so many of them are gals, but car folks is how presentable they make their cars. The cars are clean. You can pop the hood, look at it. A lot of times, you know, you pop the hood in your own car and you're embarrassed to let your mechanics see it. So here we go, of course, the 1983 Buick Riviera. I believe earlier today we walked by a 63 Buick Riviera. So, of course, General Motors evolved this car over time. A little bit more going on underneath the hood here because it's the 80s. So you got all kinds of hoses and stuff. And, you know, my favorite era, of course, is the 60s, is the 70s. But, of course, it's all makes and models of cars here. An 05 Chevrolet SSR brought down from Rochester Hills. And one of the cool things, by the way, you'll notice is a lot of these cars are local, but you might not see them very often because they don't get out as often. These are not daily drivers. These are cars people bring out on special occasions or drive on nice days. So a great day like today is we're going to see so many of these cars in one place. The gentleman who brought this here from Madison Heights, 1953 Buick Skylark. Beautiful car. I suspect manufactured up there in Flint, Michigan, where so many Buicks came from. And it is absolutely gorgeous. Back when you could fit a family of 6 in the car and go for a drive with a top down on a nice sunny weekend day. That is an absolutely gorgeous car. And somebody spent a lot of time cleaning that car up and getting it to look nice. So we're going to take a little stroll here. We're in front of the Columbia Center. So if you are driving out here, cut across 16 Mile. We're just east of I-75. And you cannot miss the building. About 3/4 of a mile, I think, east of 75. And we looked earlier at that black Cobra. This is another Cobra. This is a 1965, though. So this very well could be one of the original Cobras. And AC Cobra was building cars in America. Back in the day, if you saw the movie Ford versus Ferrari, you know all about these cars. But strictly a driving car. Car that you care about speed and handling. That's what this car is all about. A lot of horsepower, well-balanced frame, side pipes, of course. You've got the knockoff hubs we talked about earlier. And, of course, a roll bar for the driver. Let's head over here. A lot of people are familiar with the old 57 Chevy, the 56, 57 Chevys. And, of course, 57 Chevy has got that tail fin on it. But you might notice this is not the typical coupe. This is more of a station wagon. And I believe this is called a Nomad. And I'm right because I just looked at the license plate and the license plate says a Nomad. So I like it when I'm proven right by the signage. But again, back when station wagons, you know, minivans became all the rage at one point in time. And before the minivans, there was a station wagon. And some people consider these to be the most classic, most beautiful station wagons ever built. I wouldn't argue with them on that. That is a gorgeous car, beautifully restored. And you'll notice the interior, multi-colors in the seats and so on. Nowadays, you don't get that kind of options available to you as you buy a car. 57 Chevy Nomad. I'm just reading off the sign here. Platform used was GM's smallest, and the car featured a very popular 2-piece tailgate. Remember that when the tailgate would go down and it also had the window in it? And sometimes you actually get them to open this way. Nowadays, you'll get one door that opens and you'll take it or leave it. That's it. That's it. And I also like the cables. I think these cables could like hold up the Mackinac Bridge, right? So there you go. And of course, parked right next to it is your Ford GT. And you'll see these at car shows. These are very, very cool cars. It's a mid-engine sports car. So the engine is not here underneath the hood where most people would expect to see an engine. But it's also very, very sleek and streamlined. And these were designed for racing, primarily in Europe. And the engine is actually directly behind the driver's seat in the middle, but it's called a mid-engine because it's actually so far forward, it's not a rear engine in that sense. But these are very, very cool cars. Ford raced these back in the day. I mentioned Ford versus Ferrari, the movie, not so long ago. Then Ford put these back into production more recently. So they're still making them, by the way. But this is a 2006 Ford GT, highly collectible, very, very limited run. and pricey. When you bought one of these cars brand new, you paid a couple bucks for it. So it's one of those things that you got to ask. You probably can't afford it. But let's take a look at this over here, because like the Cobra I was talking about earlier, you'll notice that the cockpit, if you can get a good shot of that, that cockpit is basically like a cockpit for a race car, right? It's just for driving and going fast. And then if we can get a shot here through the back window, you can see the engine. This is a mid-engine car, so the engine is, in essence, in the middle of the car. Gives the car very, very good balance, in particular as you're going around curves and corners. Because a typical American car, the front engine has got all the weight out front. You put it in the back, you might want to swing out, but middle, there you go. Mid-engine car. Now, I've mentioned earlier that I'm a Mopar guy. I love Mopars. I've owned Fords, I've owned GM, but I'm not a real big Ford guy. And that's a thing in the car industry that Ford and Chrysler, it's like Android and iPhones, okay? And so I will admit I'm not a big Ford fan, but if you said, Steve, you've got to take a Ford product. You've got to. Here you go, my friends. The convertible Shelby Mustang. Beautiful car. Again, we're back to Carroll Shelby, but Shelby had a deal with Ford Motor Company back in the day where he would take Ford Mustangs from Ford and put high performance parts on them, oftentimes different wheels, air scoops, higher performance engine. He'd sometimes beef up some of the suspension, and you could always tell because there would often be different tail lights, for instance. And of course, the Shelby logo is across the back deck lid here. And by the way, if you want to sound like a real expert, you don't call this the trunk. This is the deck lid. So there you go. Shelby with the Shelby Cobra gas cap and the really cool design. And of course, this is a convertible. So in the world of collector cars, convertibles often are more valuable. But the interesting thing is that if you were to, first of all, there's one of the Shelby scoops I was mentioning, but this right here is actually a roll bar. And it's unusual because it is a car built in Detroit, sold by Carroll Shelby through Ford dealers. And there is a roll bar in this convertible. So you take the top down, there's still a bar across there, which again is a call out to racing. Whether you actually need a roll bar driving the streets of Detroit in a Mustang, probably not. And as I've said before, if you do, mistakes have been made. So I do notice that the engine has been hopped up a little bit. I suspect this is not a stock engine from back in the day. But a lot of very, very nice high performance stuff. Take a break. Okay, well, we will be back in just a minute on My Michigan Television.
This is My Michigan TV, a unique news streaming television
the break?
network. To watch simply at our app to your smartphone or smart TV. You can also watch online at mymytv.com. My Michigan TV. My.
It's peaceful, it's quiet, and the noise and stress of life can sometimes disappear.
It's the Great Lakes water. And so what people do ends up in our waterways.
It's for our health and safety, it's for our economy, it's for protecting the environment that we all enjoy and we all need to survive.
So clearing storm drains and the areas nearby of trash and leaves helps keep them for rain only.
We're all about one water in this region. We're all connected. We all have a role.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's whoop it up for these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Jimmy John's Field is the perfect venue for birthday parties, summer picnics, company outings, and provides the best entertainment in Metro Detroit with great baseball all summer long. Spend your summer nights under the lights at Jimmy John's Field in historic downtown Utica.
I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Welcome to Mackinac Island.
I'm so excited to kick off the 2022 Pure Michigan summer travel season.
We are here to give you some incredible ideas for your summer vacation. Well, yay.
Now the Great Lakes State has its own streaming TV network, My Michigan TV. My.
Welcome back to My Michigan Television. I'm Steve Lehto with Mark Lieberman. We are at the Troy Traffic Jam at the Columbia Center on 16 Mile Road in Troy, Michigan. We're just east of I-75. One of the coolest car shows every single year. I love coming out here, Mark.
It's an amazing event. You know, the diversity of vehicles, the stories from people. It's just a great time. You have a casual, comfortable scenario where people can show off the cars, the hard work they've done in order to get these things ready and bring out. And, you know, the look on their face, the pride and joy they take in bringing the car that they've worked on for years in some instances to become their dream car. They're here today.
And as a car guy, you know that quite often if you see a really cool car and you're sorry about that. If you see a really cool car, you're tempted to walk up to it and look at it, but you know that some car guys get nervous when they see you approaching their car. Out here, you see a cool car, you walk up to it, and the owner will walk up and say, "Hey, let me talk to you about my car." It's the exact opposite, and that's what I like about these so much. So many of these cars are in garages 350 days out of the year. And people take them out on the weekends, they take them to car shows. And so here's where you can see them all in one place.
It is. And the diversity of vehicles, as I was saying earlier, is amazing. Here, in fact, we're in front of, you know, a brand new Ford GT, limited production vehicles. In fact, these were so difficult to get, you actually had to be invited by Ford in order to buy one of these. In this instance, not only did you have to make an application that was several pages long, but you had to do a video. They wanted to see whether you were an influencer on social media. They wanted their cars to be out there. When it was this special of a build, they wanted to make sure it wasn't being sold necessarily to somebody that was just going to stash it away and it would be forgotten by the public. They want these cars to be seen.
Approximately how many of these cars get built each year? Do you know?
I don't know what their final production was on these cars, but I can tell you that each of these were bespoke builds. You actually got a kit to be able to select colors, materials, textiles for the interior, designs for the wheels. You had choices of a carbon series, the standard series, and in the most recent and final editions, they did some really unusual builds. An Alan Mann car, Holman and Moody, really special examples.
And one of the things I've mentioned before is we walked by a Ford GT a couple shots back. This is a mid-engine car, so you can see the engine by looking through the rear window. And that creates some unusual engineering problems. For instance, how do you cool the engine? So interestingly, there's a radiator in the car, because there's got to be, but I believe, isn't this air flowing through this vent to cool the engine?
It is. And, in these instances, you've got, forced aspiration on these cars. So you have a tremendous amount of horsepower being generated from only 6 cylinders. And the funny thing is as we're watching the technology in these high performance automobiles evolve, it took fewer cubic inches, fewer cylinders to produce more horsepower. In fact, today, a mundane car, a minivan, can have the horsepower that a muscle car used to back in the 70s.
Right. And I like how these cars, where they put so much attention to detail in every single thing. So, for instance, the wheels, like I've seen, you remember this back in the 60s, they'd make a muscle car with just throwaway wheels. You've got these beautiful wheels. You've got the beautiful brake calipers. Even the air stem cap is cool. I mean, they put a lot of thought and attention into the detail on this car.
Indeed. Special Brembo brakes. In fact, the kit that I mentioned that you would get to be able to select and spec in these cars had tiny little model wheels. With each example, you could choose, you could see which wheel you wanted to have on there. Really, really a cool setup.
Right. And so this, of course, is from Ford Motor Company. Directly behind it is a car from Chevrolet. And I know about this car because we've met the owner before the previous car show. This is what they call a Copo Camaro. And that's a callback to the old days when the corporate, what's Copo stand for?
Central Office Production Order.
Yeah, and so back in the old days, if you had the right connections, you could actually talk to them and say, I'd like to order a Camaro. Let's make it a Z28, but maybe not put in, I don't know, radiator, maybe not a heater. Maybe let's leave a bunch of stuff off for weight to save power. And so Copo became famous, and so they revived the name with this vehicle. This vehicle is not street legal. It's not designed to be built, raced on the street. It's designed to be raced at a racetrack in very short increments.
It's true. It has a roll cage. You have the real 427 engine in it, and a specialized race drivetrain throughout. In fact, there is nothing that is streetable about this particular car. Cut off open exhaust. It is designed to go very fast, a quarter mile at a time.
And I like the fact that when you pop the hood and you look underneath there, it's clean, and look at all that aluminum. Aluminum is nice. You see it underneath the hood of a car.
It is, and it's a very special car. You have to have a special license to run this on the track. It requires a special fuel. In fact, everything about this car is special. They built them in very small numbers, and it was indeed a special order vehicle that you had to, let's say, have an important connection in order to get one.
And probably a couple of bucks too. But, we aren't out here to discuss prices of cars. We're just out here to discuss the coolness of cars. And so this car was built by General Motors, Chevrolet, to be run at drag strips. And of course, the thing about that is there's no reason for the car to be street legal. So my understanding is this car doesn't even have a technical, like a VIN. It's got a almost like just get a bill of sale with it and a part number, right?
Correct. And when you're pushing over 1,000 horsepower and able to do a quarter mile in a flash, these things were designed only for one thing, and that's go straight and do it fast.
Right. And I forgot, does this car have a passenger seat?
It does.
It does. Okay, but I believe that's a requirement for super stock class, right?
Yes, and in this particular instance, it's important to have that secondary seat so you could theoretically take somebody with you to give them a heart attack on the ride.
There you go. And of course, we've got the shifter. And I love the cockpit in this thing because the shifter is so old school that you understand that, again, it does not have a typical streetable transmission. It's got a racing transmission.
Right. Well, the ratchet shifter is put in place so you don't miss a gear. Remember, there's a lot happening in a span of only 8 seconds when you're putting your foot in this car.
And I also like the back end of this car because it's got a drag chute at the end of the quarter mile, just in case you want to heat your brakes up too much, you pop the chute. It's got wheelie bars so that if the front end comes too far off the ground, it'll get pushed back down again. And it's got a fuel shutoff switch. And can you explain to me why you want a fuel shutoff switch out here where the driver can't reach it?
Well, the idea is if you've got a fire there, somebody in your support staff can shut things off very quickly.
Okay.
And here it's important to take the laundry with you.
Yeah.
Because when you're going at the rate of speed that these are, stopping, it needs to be handled by more than just brakes.
And I'm always curious about this. I've gone skydiving before. I'm not saying it's the greatest idea I ever had because I never did it again. But I've gone skydiving and packing the parachute, there's actually a science to it. I'm wondering if somebody has one of these cars, how do you learn to pack the chute?
Well, I'm quite certain that there is a whole regimen and a specific system that makes it legal for this chute to be packed and used at a track. It's not something that I think that you do haphazardly.
Okay, and so we're talking, of course, about like NHRA and the various sanctioning bodies. If you want to take it to a track, there are tracks out there that let you bring anything you want out there and race it.
Right.
But if you actually want to do it with professionals and so on, then you got to follow the rules and get qualified, so on.
Indeed.
Okay. Well, Mark, we've had a great time out here. I know I have, so I'm assuming you did too.
Of course.
And I think, will be also broadcasting from the Woodward Dream Cruise coming up pretty soon.
We will.
And I'm sure we'll be back out here next year also, because I love this show. I really do love this show. It's one of the greatest shows there is. So I'm going to go out and wander around myself now and just check this stuff out. But we got to thank the wonderful people at the Columbia Center who host us every year at the Troy Traffic Jam. It's a fundraiser for the Troy Historical Village. They do great educational work, and they're preserving the past there. So, Mark, good seeing you again, my friend. Let's go walk around and check out the cars. This is mymichigantelevision.com. See you later.
Now the Great Lakes State has its own streaming TV network, My Michigan TV. My.